I was just 6 when Mom passed away. My memories of her are like whispers, soft and fleeting. I remember her gentle touch and her warm smile. They said she was the kindest soul. But after she was gone, the warmth in our house faded like the last light of dusk. Dad didn't take long to fill the void she left. Enter Helen, my stepmother, with her sharp eyes and a smile that never quite reached them. She was like a winter chill, creeping into every corner of our lives. To Dad, she was sweetness personified, always the doting wife. But the moment we were alone, her mask would drop. "Listen here, Emily," she'd hiss, her voice slicing through the silence. "Don't think for a second that you're anything more than a burden. Your father might not see it, but I do. You're just excess baggage, a reminder of a past best forgotten." Her words stung, but I learned to keep my tears hidden. I couldn't let her see how deep her words cut. A year flew by, and the family dynamic shifted even more. Helen gave birth to Lily, and overnight, I became invisible. Dad, caught up in the joy of a new daughter, unwittingly handed the reins of my life over to Helen. It was like handing a fox the keys to the henhouse. She relished in making my life a living nightmare. Dad was hardly around, always buried in work or too tired to notice the tension. On the rare occasions he was present, Helen played the part of the perfect wife and mother, and I was just the ghost in the background. So, I learned to live in the shadows, my voice a mere echo in the vast emptiness of what used to be a home. Helen's reign was undisputed, her words the final say in a house that had once known the gentle guidance of my mother. And as the days turned to years, I found myself wondering if the warmth of a family was just a distant dream, forever out of reach in the cold reality I existed in. Living with Helen was like walking through a minefield, never knowing when the next explosion would occur. Meal times were a particular kind of torture. She knew exactly which dishes made my stomach turn, yet those were the ones she'd serve me, her eyes glinting with malice as she'd set the plate down. "Here, Emily, your dinner. Eat up, we can't have you wasting away," she'd say, a twisted smile on her lips as she served me the very things she knew I despised. I'd sit there, the smell alone enough to make me nauseous. The few times I mustered the courage to push the plate away, Helen's theatrics would come into play. "John, look at her. Your daughter is turning into a princess, too good for the food I slaved over. What are we going to do with her?" she'd wail to my father, painting herself as the victim. Dad, ever the peacemaker, would sigh. "Emily, can't you just eat what's given to you? Your stepmother works hard to prepare these meals." But it wasn't just the food. Helen's cruelty extended to how I was presented to the world. My clothes were either a hodgepodge of mismatched colors and patterns or hand-me-downs so worn they were threadbare. I'd step out looking more like a scarecrow or a parrot, drawing snickers and sideways glances from my peers. "Emily, why do you dress like that? You look weird," the kids at school would jeer. I'd swallow the lump in my throat, my cheeks burning with shame. "It's all I have," I'd mumble, wishing I could just disappear. Back at home, Lily lived a starkly different life. She was the golden child, the center of Helen and Dad's world. Her wardrobe was a collection of the prettiest dresses, her meals always her favorites. She grew up with the world at her feet, and it showed in her attitude. Spoiled and petulant, she'd throw tantrums if things didn't go her way, and Helen would rush to soothe her, blaming me for her outbursts. "Emily, look what you did. You upset your sister," Helen would scold, even if I hadn't done a thing. And if Lily ever got caught doing something wrong, somehow, it would be twisted to be my fault. "Emily, I can't believe you'd do this," Dad would say, disappointment in his eyes, as Helen spun her tales, painting me as the instigator and Lily as the innocent. But despite the pain, the unfairness of it all, a small part of me held on to hope. Hope that one day, things would change. That one day, Dad would see through Helen's lies. That one day, I'd be able to leave this all behind and find a place where I belonged, a place where I was more than just the unwanted stepdaughter, more than just the shadow in the background of Lily's perfect life. Life under Helen's roof was a daily grind, a test of endurance. But amidst the gloom, a flicker of light appeared, so unexpected it almost felt like a dream. It happened one ordinary evening, the kind that usually passed in silence or with Helen's sharp words cutting through the air. I was in my room, lost in my books, the only escape I had from the dreariness of my existence, when Dad's voice broke through the quiet. "Emily, come down here. We need to talk," he called, his tone more serious than usual. Curiosity piqued, I hesitated for a moment, wondering what I might have done wrong this time. As I made my way downstairs, I found Dad sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of him. Helen was there too, her eyes wary, a frown creasing her forehead. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Dad cleared his throat, his eyes meeting mine. "Emily, I've been thinking. It's about time we discussed your future. You're graduating soon, and..." Helen cut in, her voice sharp. "Yes, Emily. Your father thinks it's time you stood on your own 2 feet. Isn't that right, John?" But Dad shook his head, silencing her with a look. "What I'm trying to say is, your mother, God rest her soul, she left something for you. For your education. It's enough to get you through college." I stood there, stunned, the words barely sinking in. "College? You mean, I can go to college?" Helen scoffed. "Oh, now she's interested. Thought you'd be too busy feeling sorry for yourself to care about your future." Dad's gaze hardened. "Enough, Helen. This isn't about you. Emily, your mother wanted this for you. She set aside this money before she passed. It's yours, and I think it's what she would have wanted." The room spun around me. College. A chance to escape, to build a life away from the cold stares and harsh words. I felt a lump in my throat, a mix of gratitude and an overwhelming sense of what this meant. "Thank you, Dad. I don't know what to say," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Helen snorted. "Well, don't get too excited. It's not a free ride. You'll have to work hard, prove that you're not just wasting your mother's hard-earned money." But her words, usually so cutting, couldn't pierce the bubble of hope that had formed around me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a path forward, a way out. The following weeks were a blur of applications, forms, and preparations. Helen's barbs continued, but they bounced off me, unable to puncture the shield of determination I had built. I was going to college, stepping into a future that was mine to shape. And as I packed my bags, ready to leave the house that had never truly felt like home, I looked back, not with sadness, but with a sense of closure. This was more than just leaving, it was the first step toward finding myself, toward healing the wounds of the past and building a life where I was more than just the unwanted stepdaughter, more than just a shadow in a cold, unloving home. Helen watched me with a smirk as I headed for the door. "Don't think this is the end, Emily. Life's not that kind. You'll learn soon enough." I met her gaze, my resolve unshaken. "Maybe. But at least I'll be learning, growing, and most importantly, living on my terms." With those final words, I stepped out, the weight of the past lifting with each step I took. The future was uncertain, daunting even, but it was mine, and that was all that mattered. Leaving home for college was like taking a deep breath after years underwater. I was off to study law in a city miles away from the stifling walls of my past. I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and relief as the bus pulled away, the familiar sights fading into the distance. Life in college was a whirlwind of lectures, libraries, and late-night study sessions. I threw myself into the law, finding solace in the clarity of statutes and the fairness of justice, so different from the life I'd known. Holidays would come, and I'd send my wishes back home, but the silence that returned was deafening. No happy birthday, no Merry Christmas, just the echo of my own voice in the void. Years slipped by, and my hard work paid off. Graduation day came, and I walked across that stage, not just with a degree in hand, but with the satisfaction of having done it on my own. I landed a job at a small law firm, throwing myself into the world of briefs and courtrooms. I was 25, standing on my own 2 feet, carving out my place in the world. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang one lazy Sunday afternoon. The screen flashed Dad, making my heart skip a beat. "Hello?" I answered, my voice cautious. "Emily, it's your dad. I know it's been a while, and I'm sorry for that. I'm not doing too well, health-wise. And I've been thinking, maybe it's time to mend fences, you know?" His voice was weaker than I remembered, laced with a regret that tugged at my heartstrings. "Dad, of course, I want that too. How are you? What's wrong?" The concern in my voice surprised even me. "It's a long story, Em. I've got some health issues, and well, it made me realize, life's too short for grudges, or what have been. I miss you, kiddo." Hearing the word miss from him, after all these years, it did something to me. It was as if a small, locked-away part of my heart creaked open. "I miss you too, Dad. I can come visit, see how you're doing. We can talk, try to start over." I found myself saying, the words spilling out before I could weigh them. That'd mean the world to me, Em. Really. The call ended with a promise to visit soon, leaving me in a whirlwind of emotions. For so long, I'd built up walls, prepared myself to go through life without my family. And now, with just a few words, those walls seemed less impenetrable. As I was packing my suitcases in my car, I realized that this wasn't just a journey back home. It was a journey into the unknown, a chance to heal old wounds, to bridge the gap that time and silence had widened. And for the first time in a long time, I found myself looking forward to what lay ahead. The drive back to my hometown felt longer than it actually was. Each mile closer to the house where I grew up made my heart race a little faster. I hadn't been back since I left for college, and the thought of facing them all again was daunting. Pulling into the driveway, I sat for a moment, gathering my thoughts. The house looked the same, yet different somehow, smaller and less intimidating than in my memories. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and walked up to the front door. Before I could even knock, it swung open, and there was Helen, her eyes scrutinizing me from head to toe. "Well, if it isn't the prodigal daughter. Back from the big city, huh? Still dressing like you're on a budget, I see," Helen sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. I felt the old familiar sting of her words, but I wasn't the same timid girl anymore. "Clothes don't make a person, Helen. It's what's inside that matters," I replied, my voice steady. Her laugh was harsh, devoid of warmth. "Look at you, all grown up and spouting wisdom. Come in then. Your father's been asking about you." As I stepped into the house, memories flooded back, each room a reminder of the years I'd spent under Helen's critical eye. I found Dad in the living room, a shadow of his former self, looking frail and tired. "Dad," I said softly, approaching him. His eyes met mine, and I saw a flicker of emotion, a mix of sadness and relief. "Emily, you're here. I've been thinking about you, about everything. I wasn't there for you when you needed me most. I'm sorry, so sorry for that." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. "It's okay, Dad. We can't change the past. What's important is that we're here now." He nodded, his hand reaching out weakly, and I took it, a silent acknowledgement of forgiveness and a tentative step toward healing. Helen watched from the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Well, this is touching. The perfect family reunion," she said, her voice laced with sarcasm. I chose to ignore her jab, focusing instead on Dad. "How have you been, really?" I asked, concern lacing my words. "It's been tough, Emily. The illness, it takes a lot out of me. But having you here, it means more than you know," he replied, his voice weak, but genuine. Behind Helen, I noticed Lily peeking in, her expression curious. She was no longer the little girl I remembered, but an 18-year-old young woman, looking unsure of where she fit into this unexpected family gathering. "Lily, come here. It's been a long time," I said, offering her a small smile. She hesitated for a moment before stepping forward. "Hi, Emily. You look Different, she said, her tone cautious, but not unkind. Different good, I hope, I replied, trying to break the ice. She gave a small, uncertain smile. Yeah, different good. The conversation was awkward, the years of distance and Helen's influence hanging heavily between us. But it was a start, a small crack in the wall that had separated us for so long. In the days that followed, I found a small apartment nearby and settled into a routine of visiting Dad, trying to make up for lost time. Our talks were sometimes painful, often healing, a mix of regret and rediscovery. Helen's presence was a constant challenge, her remarks a reminder of the past. But the change in Dad, the softening of Lily, it gave me hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to be a family again, flawed and fractured, but together in our own way. Life in my hometown was settling into a rhythm, a delicate balance between the past and the present. Dad's health was a constant worry, but our newfound bond brought a sense of peace that had been missing for years. However, the calm was soon to be disrupted in a way I never anticipated. One evening, as I was leaving Dad's house, Helen cornered me in the hallway, her eyes glinting with an unfamiliar intensity. Emily, your father wants to talk about something important. Something about his will. You should be there, she said, her voice low and urgent. Surprised by her seriousness, I nodded. Okay, Helen. Let's see what Dad has to say. We gathered in the living room, the air thick with anticipation. Dad looked more somber than usual, a stack of papers on the table in front of him. Lily sat quietly, her eyes darting between Dad and me. Emily, Lily, I've been doing a lot of thinking. Life's thrown us some curveballs, and it's made me realize how important it is to put things in order. Dad began, his voice steady but strained. Helen interjected, her tone sharp. John, just get to the point. What are you trying to say? Dad took a deep breath. I've decided to revise my will. Emily, I've not been fair to you, not for a long time. I want to make it right. I'm leaving you a portion of my estate, $300,000. It's what your mother would have wanted. The room went silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Helen's face turned a shade paler, her lips pressed into a thin line. You can't be serious, John. Emily's been gone for years, and now she just waltzes back in and you're giving her part of our family's estate? What about Lily? Helen's voice was sharp, her words slicing through the tension. Dad remained firm. It's my decision, Helen. Emily is my daughter, and she deserves this. It's long overdue. I was speechless, the emotion swirling inside me too complex to untangle. Gratitude, guilt, and a sense of vindication all mixed together. Lily finally spoke up, her voice small but clear. Dad, it's your choice. I just want us to be a family again. That's more important than any will. Helen shot her a withering look, but said nothing. The tide had shifted, the dynamics of our family changing in ways I never imagined. Weeks turned into a tentative dance of civility in the house. I'd drop by often, each visit less tense than the last, almost normal. Helen, to my surprise, was behaving decently, her usual sharp tongue seemingly dulled. One sunny afternoon, as I was leaving Dad's place, Helen approached me, a hint of unease in her eyes. Emily, I hate to ask, but can I borrow your car? Mine's broken down, and I have an important errand. I wouldn't bother you otherwise, she said, her voice almost too casual. I hesitated, the keys to my car heavy in my pocket. But seeing her seemingly genuine distress, I relented. Sure, Helen. Just be careful, all right? I said, handing her the keys. She offered a rare smile. Thank you, Emily. You're a lifesaver. I left by taxi, a nagging unease in the pit of my stomach. The next day, I returned to pick up my car, expecting to find it parked outside. But the space was empty. Confusion turned to concern as I hurried inside. Helen, where's my car? It's not outside, I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She looked up from her magazine, her expression one of confusion. What do you mean? It should be right out front. You gave me the keys, remember? Dad, seated at the table, chimed in, his brow furrowed. Lily took the car out early this morning. Didn't she tell you, Helen? Helen's face went pale. No, she didn't. Why would she take your car, Emily? She knows it's not hers to use. Before I could respond, my phone rang, the sound slicing through the tension. It was the local police. My heart sank as the officer on the line explained that my car had been involved in an accident. Lily was driving, and the brakes had failed. She was in the hospital. The room spun as I relayed the news. Helen let out a gasp, clutching her chest as she staggered, then collapsed into a chair. Oh God, what have I done? She murmured, her voice barely a whisper. Dad and I exchanged a look of confusion and horror. Helen, what are you talking about? What have you done? I demanded, my voice rising with panic. When she finally composed herself, her words sent chills down my spine. I tampered with the brakes, thinking it would be you driving, not Lily. Oh God, I was so angry about the will, about everything. I never meant for Lily to get hurt. The confession hit like a punch to the gut. Disbelief, rage, and shock coursed through me as Dad called the police, his hands shaking. The room, once a place of tense reconciliation, was now a scene of betrayal and devastation. As the reality of Helen's actions sank in, the world as I knew it crumbled. The fragile peace we'd built, the family we'd tried to mend, it was all shattered by a single, unthinkable act. And as we waited for the police to arrive, the weight of what had happened, of what could have happened, was suffocating. I was torn between concern for Lily, lying in a hospital bed because of a malicious act meant for me, and the betrayal by Helen, a woman who had proven she was capable of the unimaginable. The road to healing and forgiveness had been hard enough, but now, it felt impossible. The police arrived, their arrival a stark reminder of how quickly life can spiral out of control. Helen was taken away, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. Dad and I sat in silence, the weight of her confession hanging heavy between us. I can't believe she would do something like this. To her own daughter. Dad's voice broke, the betrayal cutting him deeper than any illness ever could. I reached out, taking his hand. Dad, we need to be strong, for Lily. She needs us now more than ever. He nodded, his eyes moist with unshed tears. You're right, Emily. It's just, all these years, I never knew the person I was sharing my life with. The following days were a blur of hospital visits and legal procedures for divorce. Lily was stable, but the road to recovery was going to be long. Seeing her in that hospital bed, so fragile, so innocent, it stirred a protectiveness in me I didn't know I had. One evening, as we sat by her bedside, Lily's voice, weak but clear, broke the silence. Emily. I'm sorry. For everything. I never knew. I never thought. I squeezed her hand gently. Lily, it's not your fault. You didn't know. We're going to get through this, together. Dad, who had been a silent presence, spoke up. Both of you, you're my girls. What Helen did, it's unforgivable. But we're a family, and we're going to heal, move forward. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, life began to find a new rhythm. Helen's trial was the talk of the town, but within the walls of our home, we focused on healing, on rebuilding the broken bonds. Lily's recovery was a miracle in itself. Each small step, each smile, was a victory, a testament to her strength. And as she grew stronger, so did the bond between us. Dad, I've been thinking, I said one evening as we sat in the living room, a semblance of peace settling around us. Maybe it's time for a fresh start. A new beginning for all of us. Dad looked at me, understanding dawning in his eyes. You're right, Emily. We've been given a second chance, and we shouldn't waste it. Let's leave the past where it belongs, and build a new future, for us, for Lily. And so we did. We sold the old house, the place of so many painful memories, and found a new home, a place where the shadows of the past couldn't reach us. It wasn't easy, starting over, but with each other, we found the strength to move forward, to create a new story, one filled with hope and love.